Hello everyone and welcome. This presentation is about personality and the chakras. So as part of the psychology course, we're particularly looking at personality in this lecture, an aspect of our psychology, and from a yogic perspective, using the chakras to help guide our understanding of personality. So in this lecture, we'll look at what is personality, what are the chakras, and how the gunas evolve within the chakras, and how all of that corresponds to the personality that we develop. So in understanding this, it's something that we can look at in ourselves, how the chakra development affects our own personal personality. It might help us see something more about our own development. And as yoga teachers, it can also be helpful for looking at our students and understanding what's happening within them. So we can begin by asking, what is personality? And from a traditional Western perspective, personality is the distinctive and characteristic patterns of perception, memory, thought, emotions, and behavior that define an individual's personal style of interacting with their physical and social environment. And I've highlighted two phrases within this definition. Distinctive, meaning that everyone's personality is different. So when we interact with others and when we come to understand ourselves, realizing that every person will have their distinctive, their unique personality, and also that this personality has to do with patterns of perception. Patterns, things that happen again and again. And our personality is something that, even though we may not realize it, our thoughts, our memories, our emotions, the way that we see the world around us is happening in a similar way every time we look at it. So our personality is shaping the way that we think, the way that we see the world. And the more that we can come to understand our own personality, these own patterns within ourselves, which is part of the yogic practice, is to understand these patterns, bring them more into our consciousness. This will help us develop ourselves and grow. And in yoga, personality is described as an ultimate personality in the Bhagavad Gita, defined as Sthita-prajna. So in the next slide, we'll look at what Bhagavad Gita has to say about this particular term. So I'd suggest that you take some time and read through these different verses. These all come from the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And in this chapter, we see a description of what Sthita-prajna is about. And one way that we can look at it is as a balanced intellect and the ultimate ability for discrimination. So the yogi develops this ideal personality where there's complete balance in the mind, where we don't get swayed by the different ups and downs and tosses and turns within life, but we're able to see clearly with this discrimination. And what's interesting about this concept of Sthita-prajna is that in modern psychology today, there isn't this sense of what the ultimate or ideal personality is about. But yoga is unique in that it helps give us a very clear direction of how to develop ourselves, and this Sthita-prajna is that. So now we'll look at what are chakras. And chakras are different energy centers within the body. So there's 7 main chakras in the body, although there's actually many more than this. You'll usually hear about these main 7 that are listed here in this picture. And each of these central energy centers are also associated to a particular gland in the endocrine system, like a trigger point. And this helps correspond to the part of the body, to the energy center. And when we tap into this, it can help awaken that corresponding chakra. And chakras are the points within the body where the nadis, that last word listed on the slide, nadis are the pathways of energy that move through the body. And there's 3 main nadis in the body, Ida, Pingala, and Sushumna, and they kind of weave together in a snake-like pattern with Sushumna going up the center. And the points where these three channels meet, those are the points within the body that the chakras, these 7 main chakras, are the central points. So now we'll move through these 7 chakras and talk about the qualities and characteristics of each chakra. Starting with the first chakra, the root chakra, known as Mooladhara chakra. So Mooladhara is known as the root center, and it's related to the earth element. It's also associated with the most gross part of the body. So in the male body, it's the area between the anus and genitals, and the female body between the uterus and vagina. Its color is a deep red and has a 4-petaled flower associated with it. And the root bija mantra is Lam. This chakra is associated with the right to be here, the right to have. And what this means is when we function from this chakra, we look at the world as a place to survive in. We're learning about trust, and our focus is around survival and physical health. So it's the right to be here, the right to have. And this chakra is most important during the first year of life, from 0 to 1, when children are developing a sense of trust in the world. So when this chakra is in excess, we might become very heavy, sluggish, potentially obese. But when it's deficient, we become very fearful or less restless and underweight. Now we move on to Svadhisthana, the second chakra known as the sacral chakra. And Svadhisthana is usually associated with the unconscious mind. When we see it represented, we see it as a 6-flowered petals, an orange color. And the element associated with the chakra is the water element, which makes sense because of the part of the body that it's in. So this has to do with the urinary system and reproductive organs. So the movement of water and fluids in the body is associated with this chakra. It's also associated with emotions, and it's about our right to feel, our right to want. So it's deeply connected to our emotional identity. When this chakra is excessive, overactive, we might become overly emotional or have poor boundaries. However, when it's deficient and underactive, we might become very rigid or emotionally numb, where we're not really in touch with our emotions at all. Next, we come to Manipura, the third chakra, known as the navel chakra. And this Manipura is at the center of the heat in the body, and it's associated then with the digestive system and the digestive fire. So the element is that of fire. We see it represented as a 10-petaled flower in yellow color, and the bija mantra is Ram. So this chakra is associated with our right to act. It has to do with vitality, power, purpose, and self-esteem. It's our inner strength and fire. And when it's excessive, it's very possible that we might become dominating or controlling, even aggressive. When Manipura is deficient, we might start feeling low self-esteem, passive, and sluggish. So it's about our energy in the world, and when this chakra is in balance, having this positive willpower and self-esteem. Come to ANAHATA, the heart chakra. So, as you would imagine, the heart chakra is associated with the area of the heart, the chest, and its color is typically that of pink, green, sometimes blue, and it's represented with 12 petals. It's known as the center of spiritual or unconditional love, and its element is air. The bija mantra for ANAHATA is YAM. So this chakra is associated with love, compassion, self-acceptance, and good relationships. So it's not only about loving others, but also about loving ourselves, accepting ourselves. And when this chakra is in excess, we might become codependent on another person. We might have poor boundaries, become possessive, or even jealous. As it's deficient, we become shy, reserved, lonely, isolated, or bitter. Next, we come to VISHUDDHI, the throat chakra. VISHUDDHI is regarded as the center of purification, and we might visualize a lotus with a purple color and 16 petals, also chanting the bija mantra of Hum. The element here is that of space or ether. So we're moving toward more subtle elements, as well as more subtle chakras that are associated with different aspects. So this chakra has to do with communication in the throat. If the throat is physically blocked, we're not able to communicate well. So this chakra has to do with our right to speak and to be heard. We communicate clearly, creatively, when this chakra is open and balanced, and our words have resonance. They have an effect on others around us. However, when this chakra is in excess, we might find that someone is talking excessively, and it's difficult for them to have the ability to listen. They might also stutter, so the speech becomes unclear. When it's deficient, there might be a fear of speaking or poor rhythm in speech, and the way of communicating becomes faulted in some way. Now the sixth chakra, AJNA chakra, known as the third eye or eyebrow center chakra. Ajna is known as the third eye and the center of our intuition, sometimes even known as the Guru chakra. It's kind of like the command center. It's said that when awakened, the practitioner can view events on different planes of consciousness with complete awareness. Its color is a silverish blue and typically has 2 petals. It is situated at the top of the spinal cord, at the point where Ida, Pingala, and Sushumna merge together. From Ajna, these 3 nadis travel up as one to the final chakra. You might see sometimes in India the red mark that women or Brahmins wear between the eyes, and this is to help connect us and remind us of this chakra, this intuitive place within us. The bija mantra for this chakra is Om. And this chakra has to do with our right to see. So yes, it's physically associated with the eyes, but not only physically seeing with the eyes, but seeing in a more subtle capacity, such as through our intuition, that eye that isn't physically there but has a way of seeing what the truth is clearly. So it has to do with psychic perception and even imagination. When Ajna chakra is in excess, we might get headaches, have nightmares, delusions, or difficulty concentrating. So these are a lot of issues happening within the mind, within thought processes. If it's deficient, we have poor memory or poor vision. Finally, we come to the 7th of these main 7 chakras, known as SAHASRARA. SAHASRARA, or the crown chakra, symbolizes the threshold between the physical realm of space and time and the transcendental realm beyond. So we have our physical body, but through SAHASRARA, we're able to reach beyond. When the practitioner awakens the chakra, we experience a state of mind that is indescribable in terms of thoughts or feelings, and making this chakra the most difficult to speak about. It's represented by 1,000 petals and the color of white or clear. The bija mantra associated with it is Om. And Sahasrara chakra has to do with our right to know, our right to be able to see clearly and know beyond what is known, even in the physical world. Wisdom, knowledge, and spiritual connection to that which is beyond us. When Sahasrara is in excess, we might become overly intellectual and almost disconnected from the physical world. It could also lead to spiritual addiction, where you're using spiritual practice but in an unhealthy way. And deficient, it might lead to learning difficulties or a closed-minded belief system, limited beliefs. So now that we've gone through and talked a little bit briefly about these 7 main chakras, now we can go into more detail for how the evolution of these chakras affects our personality. So it doesn't just affect our physical well-being, because it's true that when one energy within the body, such as MOOLADHARA chakra, if this is imbalanced in some way, it might affect the physical body in some way, such as problems with going to the toilet, since it's associated with the excretory system. So it's beyond just physical well-being. It also has to do with other processes within the body, such as mental processes, identifying ourself, perceptions, memories, instincts, intellectual thinking. So in addition, we have emotions, feelings, actions, and behaviors. Where the chakras are in their evolution will affect all aspects of our being. And this is something unique about yoga and the way that it looks at the whole being. In modern psychology, it tends to be that we just look at typically the processes of the mind. But yoga looks at the whole being and how the evolution of the chakras within us affects all these different aspects of ourselves. And there are different levels of evolution, and there's different levels of activity that we need to consider in each chakra. So evolution is the gunas, and activity is in which chakras are strongest. So we're going to look now at how the chakras evolve and how the gunas correspond to this. So there are 3 main gunas, and typically the easiest way to think about the gunas, at least when we first learn them, is about food. So we hear about rajasic food, like very spicy food that creates a lot of heat and energy in the body. Tamasic food, which is typically something very heavy, like meat, which creates some slowness or sluggishness in the body. And sattvic food, which is balanced and would be the type of food you would eat at an ashram, where there's not too much spice, there's no garlic or onions, and doesn't make the mind or body waver too much, but helps create purity and balance within the body. So gunas are not just about food, but they are the qualities of all things in our world. Gunas affect our viewpoints, our actions, and everything that we come in contact with. We live under the influence of the gunas, and they're constantly alive within us. As practitioners of yoga, we're constantly trying to move in a sattvic direction. So this is why we strive to eat a sattvic diet. So first we have tama. Tamas guna is typically it's black. It's this dull, apathetic feeling in the body. And it's not to say that tamasic guna is negative or really bad, because we do need it for survival. If we didn't have tamas guna, we wouldn't be able to fall asleep at night. We need to feel heavy in the body. We need to feel tired at times in order to fall asleep. But something like lethargy throughout our whole day, if we're sluggish and slow in our work, then that's going to cause problems for us. Rajasic guna is that counteraction to tamasic guna. So It has to do with passion and ambition, effort, drive. It's fiery, just like spicy food. And in Rajasic guna, this can also lead to a restlessness or too much energy. But in general, we move from Tamasic guna towards Rajasic guna. And finally, Sattvic guna, which is that of pureness, balance, and light. In this Sattvic guna, we think of the yogi. We think of usually the color of white, clarity, clear perception, and an awakened, intuitive, and wise being. So all of these will constantly be a part of who we are, but moving in the direction of Sattvic so that we can reach that place of purity and clarity within us. So now we're going to move through the chakras again and discuss how these different gunas might be present within the different chakras. And it's not just that a chakra is tamasic or it's rajasic or it's sattvic, but there's different combinations of how these gunas might appear. And you might have a chakra that's in a tamasic state, but it might be that it's tamasic rajasic or rajasic tamasic. So this evolution is there, where we move from this tamasic state towards an enlightened state within the chakra. This is not to say either that every person needs to go through each of these different stages in order to reach the enlightened stage, but we're probably at one of these levels between tamasic and enlightened stage. And as we understand ourselves, as we come to notice these patterns within us, and we can start to move toward that ultimate personality that we talked about, Citta Prajna in the Bhagavad Gita, we can start to move toward that enlightened personality, that enlightened state of being. So now we'll go through and talk about how these different gunas move and evolve within the chakras. So beginning again with Mooladhara chakra, this root chakra. So if you remember, we talked about how this chakra has to do with our right to have, our right to be here. And it's a lot about survival and physical well-being. So in a tamasic state, which is the lowest level, you can say, it has to do with our personal security and a very intense state of terror. So it might be that our mind becomes hardwired to see fear and to see danger everywhere we look. So for example, someone who's struggling with PTSD, for example, someone who's just recently come back from war, there's a high level of anxiety where they look around and they see that everything is a threat. A noise might be perceived as a gunshot. As we move toward the tamasic rajasic evolution, it's about seeing anxiety and disorder. It's about having an anxiety disorder, typically phobias. So someone who has a fair amount of stress in their life, you might call them a chronic worrier. So someone who has trouble getting on an airplane because they're just worried about all the negative possibilities of how that might affect them. But it's not as dramatic as that tamasic state where it's constantly there, but it might be more that it's triggered due to certain phobias, certain fears that arise. Now at the rajasic tamasic state, we find that someone is mostly driven, they're motivated by a need to feel secure. So all their actions, the work that they do in the world will not be necessarily for charity or for the goodness of others, but to feel safe for themselves. So this is typically done through material possessions, trying to make a lot of money. So I call this kind of like the businessman, but not that all businessmen are in this state, but someone who's accumulating a lot of money in order to feel secure. At the rajasic state, at this point, it's someone who's still motivated to feel secure, but instead of having it be just about material possessions or money, Now they're looking to feel secure through relationships. So you might think about someone who is constantly in a new relationship. They have a new boyfriend or new girlfriend all the time. They can never just be on their own. So they're trying to find that safety and security through others. At the Rajasic Sattvic state, a bit more development has now come where this person has realized that security can also be found not just in hoarding relationships or hoarding money, but in giving, in generosity. That positive feeling of security can also come if we give. But it's typically done more at a conditional level, where if I give you something, I'm still kind of expecting something in return. At the Sattvic Rajasic level, material possessions are not a source of security anymore. So it's not about having a lot of money. It's not about having a lot of possessions anymore. This person realizes that those things are not going to bring any more security. So you might think about how their basic need for security comes from within. They're content with what they already have. So that sense of security is pretty high at this point. At the Sattvic level, there's a gut feeling, this automatic feeling of security, that through everything they do, there's this feeling of something beyond that helps us to feel secure in our world, that we're safe. And at the enlightened stage, there's a sense of oneness with the absolute. They see extraordinary organization of the universe, and everything is perfect. So moving on to the second, Svadhisthana. So for this chakra, at the tamasic level, we'll have someone who is extremely depressed. They're experiencing a lot of sadness, and it might mean that this person needs some kind of medication, but they're extremely pessimistic, possibly suicidal. We'll see things like weight loss, a loss of energy to get up in the morning, and their actions are very slow and labored. At the tamasic rajasic level, this person, their emotions, their view of the world is very pessimistic. They can't see the good in anything. And it might be that at this point addictions arise as a result of that. At the rajasic tamasic level, this person is pursuing pleasure. So this Svadhisthana chakra has a lot to do with pleasure, but it's pleasure seeking kind of in all the wrong places. So I mentioned already addictions, but it could also be something like an eating disorder, gambling, or sex. And this chakra, when it's in this rajasic tamasic place, this pleasure seeking is never fulfilled. So they keep looking for it, but never really coming out of that. And at the rajasic level, it's now that they're being able to enjoy some of the pleasures of life, and they're seeking it in more positive places, finding joy and optimism in life. So their overall emotional state is a lot more positive. In the Rajasic Sattvic state, they are kind, humorous, and considerate, and oftentimes liked by others. So this person might still be looking for pleasure, looking for a positive experience, but it's done in a more ethical and compassionate way. At the Sattvic Rajasic level, it's not so much about seeking pleasure anymore, not so much about needing that for themselves, but it's someone who just naturally projects joy and pleasure for others around them. So it's kind of like the one who's the life of the party, who when you're in their presence, it just feels good to be around them. At the Sattvic level, it is that they are joy, pure joy. They don't need to experience joy from the outside, but they just have this certain charisma, their ability to see the positive and see potential. Oftentimes, really amazing teachers have this sattvic quality in Svadhisthana. They can see the potential in their students. And enlightened is the one who is carried away by pure bliss. For Manipura, talking about that center of fire, energy, power, with the tamasic evolution of this chakra, we find someone who's very stuck, like an extreme procrastinator. So the person who says that they're not going to do it today, not tomorrow, they keep putting something off and off and off, and they tend to have extremely low self-esteem. At the tamasic rajasic level, you might find someone who is there more motivated, so they're not stuck and procrastinating as much, but they're still leaving things unfinished. If you look in their workspace, it tends to be very cluttered, a lot of unfinished work around, and there's still some guilt about not finishing that work, and therefore some low self-esteem. At the rajasic tamasic level, it might be that now, because that rajasic is more dominant, there's more power, but the power is used in an abusive way over others. So it's like a bully or a dictator might be in this rajasic tamasic state. At a rajasic state, something is in it for them. So they're using their power and they're quite active and ambitious, but it's about them. It's egocentric action. And it might be that they stop the other side from scoring in a game just so that they can win. At the rajasic sattvic level, it's working hard, being ambitious, keen to do their work, and helping others without expecting a reward. So as before, it was, those self-centered types of actions. Now the actions are very motivated, but it's not about just doing it for themselves, but doing it without a reward, without expectations. At the sattvic rajasic level, we can think of this as like the karma yogis. One-pointed awareness in doing work. So they're very positive, they have a lot of effort in their work. There's no ego involved, and it's simply out of the pursuit to help others, to support others. And it's for those who they find a lot of love and natural reward from doing this work. At the sattvic level, they work with the realization that they are simply the instrument of the divine. So it's not about reaping any rewards whatsoever, but you can say that they feel like they are the instrument and God is the musician. At the enlightened stage, one realizes the ultimate power of the universe. So it's not just about feeling powerful within them, that fire, that power, that sense of self-esteem, but it's about finding the power in the universe, that power which is beyond, and feeling a part of that. And as humans, we are humbled in comparison to that power of the universe. ANAHATA, the heart chakra. At the tamasic level, there's no sense of others, no sense of love for others, no sense of connection to others whatsoever. So this is someone who we might call a sociopath or psychopath. So they have no regard whatsoever for others, for animals, for other beings, for nature. At the tamasic rajasic level, now they have friends, but it's usually risky friends, meaning that they are involved with some negative influences. For example, teenagers who find peer groups who have a negative influence and ask them to try drugs, smoking, like this. At the rajasic tamasic level, there's concern for others, but it's a fake concern. It's not really heartfelt, but there is some outward expression of concern for others, a recognition that, okay, we need to show our concern so that we can cooperate and get things done, but it's not really authentic at this level. At the rajasic level, there is more of a capacity for love, both of giving love and receiving love. However, it's more conditional. So love is out there and I may give it, but I may not. So we still have some boundaries within that love. At the Rajasic Sattvic level, there is a deep love, and it's a very deep, unconditional, authentic love. But it's primarily for selective parties. So for the people who are close to us, our children, our parents, our pets, so on. But it's not yet a love that is unconditional toward all living sentient beings. At the Sattvic Rajasic level, there is love, there is this compassion for all. There's a recognition of the needs of all people, and there's a deep concern for all people, not just those who are close to us, but even a concern and a love for those who are on the other side of the world, who we may never see. At the Sattvic level, there are the one who is love. They embody love completely. And it's not just about giving love or receiving love. It's that this person naturally has a sense of love that radiates forth from them, that you can feel just by being in the presence of this person. And at the enlightened stage, this person is absolved in cosmic love. There's no anxieties, there's no insecurities. They see the whole connection and interconnectedness of the universe and realize that the whole universe is love. Now coming to Vishuddhi chakra. So remember that this is the chakra associated with the throat, with communication, expression, and creativity. So at the tamasic level, this is the one who is verbally inept. So it's very difficult for them to communicate, to use their voice, and this usually leads to alienation and isolation, not having a lot of connections and relationships. At the tamasic rajasic level, they're no longer so isolated, but they're still not very good with communication. It's kind of like they're the wallflower at the party. So they stand off to the side, they don't tend to really talk or interact with people. And they may come across as a good listener, but this may or may not be true. At the Rajasic Tamasic level, now you get someone who's able to communicate more easily, but it tends to be quite negative. So you'll hear them say, yes, but. So all the time, yeah, okay, but, and something negative comes out. So they're using their voice, but they're complaining quite easily. At the Rajasic level, this is someone who now is quite good at having conversations, and they're also pretty good listeners. And they choose to have a conversation with a partner that will continue their ambition. For example, if they're interested to learn more about yoga, they'll really talk a lot with you about this subject. You might think of them a little bit as a chatterbox, talking a lot. At the Rajasic Sattvic level, this is the one who is quite eloquent in their speech. They create words and messages very easily. They might be a public speaker. And they have a sense of what the other person needs to know. So they're a good listener, and they're listening also for body language and other things to help create very smooth matters of communication. At the Sattvic Rajasic level, this is the one who is communicating more from a psychic level. So for example, if they're speaking to a group of people, now it's not just about reading body language or listening to what someone else is saying, but they can understand what someone needs to hear just from a psychic level. They might know what questions someone is thinking and answer them before the person can even ask. At the Sattvic level, information flows by itself, and it flows from the person. It flows through the person rather than from them. They're inspiring to audiences, and they realize that they're hearing the truth when they listen to this person speak. At the enlightened level, the cosmos is a network of communication. So Their words and vibrations of their words create ripples throughout the universe. This one is extremely careful of what they say and what they think because they realize how this will affect the universe around them. The last chakra that we'll talk about in detail is Ajna chakra. So in the evolution of the chakra, starting with tamasic, this person has difficulty in thinking. So their thinking might be quite dull, lethargic, slow in thinking and solving problems, for example. At the tamasic rajasic level, their thinking is not as slow, but it's very messy. It's not very clear. They get tripped up easily, and they may act surprised when you say something witty. So they're a bit slow in this understanding of sarcasm or jokes, for example. At the rajasic tamasic level, this person is thinking, but it's clouded by their ego. So their thinking is more clear, but it's clouded by the ego. So they're sly in their thinking, and they might know how to get away with what they want. So a bit manipulative. At the rajasic level, they're good logical thinkers, and they can work toward helping others. They have good memory, can organize information well and in meaningful ways. But they tend to be very attracted to information. And they might even worship intelligence and information above something like intuition or other ways of knowing. At the rajasic sattvic level, this person is able to think and see a big picture. So they can think in creative ways, original ways. They might be thought of as a visionary, someone who can think outside the box. At the sattvic rajasic level, we might call this person a genius. They have psychic powers of cognition, telepathy, possibly even healing, and they use these powers to benefit others. At the sattvic level, there's free access to intuition and wisdom. So it flows through them without having to really read a book or access it from the internet now. I guess Google would be more appropriate. We tend to get most of our information from there, but this person has a way of just connecting to not just information, but wisdom. And at the enlightened place, this is the realized being who knows the true meaning of the universe, of everything around them. So it's not just about information that we get from the internet, but it's about a deeper sense of knowing what we're here for, of time and space and beyond. So that was, as we went through those chakras, we were focusing on the evolution of the chakras according to the gunas and how the gunas are functioning within the chakras. But we can also not only look at the evolution, but the activity level of the chakras. So each chakra can be more or less active, or different dominance within the system. So for the person who has a very active MOOLADHARA chakra, this is the one who is primarily functioning from this place. Their activity level in MOOLADHARA is very high. This person is preoccupied with security. They think a lot about how to accumulate money, and that they are not necessarily insecure, but they think a lot about how to feel secure. This is their primary concern. So as we move on to SWADHISTHANA, when the activity in SWADHISTHANA is very high, the primary concern is now about seeking pleasure. Oftentimes it also could be about seeking sexual pleasure or just having a good time. So this person is trying to avoid any kind of difficulties or unpleasant situations, and they're very motivated by just pleasure and feeling good. They have varying levels of joyfulness and find pleasure in a variety of different ways, but this is their main concern in life, this pleasure seeking. At Manipura, the main concern is about accumulation of power and getting things done. So a lot of active, powerful, fiery energy. They are focused on developing their self-esteem. It might be that they possibly have too much power, so they become bullies or manipulative, but they are seeing power everywhere around them. Everything is about a power play. Who has it, who doesn't have it, who is their competition, and this is where they're primarily focusing. At the ANAHATA level, the one who's mostly active in this chakra, it's about care and compassion. So they can show emotions, both positive and negative emotions, but it's compassion that drives their actions. They might experience very strong emotions as a result of others, and their work often goes unnoticed for others because it's typically coming from an unconditional place. For VISHUDDHI, this is the one who is mostly concerned with the passing of information and communicating, so using their expression and communication skills. And they can never talk. They talk a lot, and it might even be in a compulsive manner, but communication and trying to sway others, influence large audience, for examples, using their voice and communicating with grace. And the one who functions with the high activity in AJNA are very deep thinkers, intellectualized, possibly not just intellect, but also intuition. They're working really with a lot of psychic abilities, potentially. It might be that they're too busy thinking and in the pursuit of truth, but in general, these are the ones who are functioning from that place of thinking. So now that we've discussed how this evolution is working within us, within all of us, it's good to understand and remind ourselves that everyone is at a different point in this evolution. When we understand this development, it can help us understand others with more love and acceptance. We can let go of judgments of others and see them more clearly as just recognizing where they are in this evolution. The different causes, the differences between the chakras and where they are in their evolution is coming from karmas, coming from our past actions, past experiences in this life or previous lives. And it's not to say that we should simply accept where we are and not work to develop ourselves. Of course, this is part of it, but we can have more compassion for others when we understand that this is where they're at. They may not be at a sattvic level yet within the development. And essentially, we all need balance. Balance between the GUNAS, between the chakras, between the whole evolution process. So it's not just to say, oh, I want to develop Ajna chakra. We have to recognize that all of these systems are interconnected, that the other chakras are there and support Ajna chakra, that it's about developing the whole system as one. But of course, it is good to see where a particular point of development might be more prevalent for us or for someone else in our lives. Our practice of yoga, through the practice of asanas, but also meditation, pranayama, mantra chanting, all of our yoga practices are there to address the chakras. Whether we realize it or not, we're always working within these energy channels. We're always moving them in one direction or another, but our practice of yoga is moving them towards a more balanced and sattvic state. So when we look at evolving ourselves, a lot of this, it's very easy to see this personality development in others. Oh, I know a person who is Rajasic in their SAHASRARA or SWADHISTHANA chakra, wherever it may be. It's easy to see it in others, but we also have to look in ourselves and develop our own personality. So one way to do this is to look at the SWAN principle. If you're familiar with this already, SW, strengths, weaknesses, AN, ambitions, and needs. And when I say current and momentum, what I mean is that our strengths and weaknesses are where we're at right now. So we might have a strength in communication. Our throat chakra might be very well developed. However, we might have some weaknesses in our understanding of our own emotions. So we need to develop that sacral chakra a bit more. So understanding our strengths and weaknesses where we are right now. And our ambitions and needs are about that momentum, about what we're moving toward. So it's about what we might need to help develop ourselves in a positive direction. So we can analyze and understand where our strengths and weaknesses are and discover what chakras may need more attention to help us develop in a positive way. And you can design a self-practice for yourself, especially if you're currently a yoga teacher. That could be a whole nother discussion about the practices that are associated with these different chakras and how we can work with the chakras, not only through asana, but through a variety of practices to help move in that positive direction. And then finally, can we have enough awareness to sense these imbalances in ourselves? So before we jump right in, it takes some time, it takes some patience to possibly sit, to notice where we are right now. And this is just about having enough awareness to sense these imbalances that are present and to be honest with ourselves about where these deficiencies might lie. And I just want to end with a note for those of us who are listening as yoga teachers. And a reminder that yoga is not only about teaching asanas, it's not only about what happens on the mat, but having this awareness of the philosophy and the psychological benefits of the yoga practice, of what's happening within the body at an energetic level. All of this can be helpful in the way that we share yoga with our students. So using an opportunity to share with them about the chakras, about how these different energy centers within us affect the way that we think and feel and experience the world. Having a different theme in your class around the different chakra, telling stories, explaining the benefits, anatomical awareness. However it may be that you try to share some of these deeper aspects of yoga, I highly encourage that. So that's it for this presentation. I hope that it was helpful and enjoyable, and thank you for listening.